Welcome to Delivered. We are delivering mothers, midwives, and magic. I'm Jasmine,
I'm Sherry. I'm Eric.
and this is
Delivered.
Delivered. We got to get that right.
I
We're going to
feel
get it
like
right.
the tagline should be
Mhm.
Mother's Magic and Mayhem. That's what just came to me just now.
That could be the dark web version of Delivered, but it's magic and
I've
mayhem.
never gone on the dark web.
I haven't either. One of our clients was talking about it
Yeah.
yesterday, and he was
On the dark
like,
web. Yeah.
don't go there.
Don't.
If you don't want to go there, use this browser and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to stick to Google Chrome. I'll get the second half of our cervical cancer episodes. It is Cervical Cancer Awareness Month in January, and I'm not the only one that's not wearing teal, so I don't feel bad about it, but teal is the color for
Color.
cervical cancer awareness. So last week, Erica told us her story, and she is our survivor. We're so happy to have her here with us. Today, we're delving into symptoms and diagnosis, different treatment, how to advocate for somebody and sit in a space with somebody who is going through a cervical cancer diagnosis and what that looks like. And then there's the healing and holistic parts of cervical cancer and things that you could practice as well. So we'll go through that. And what I loved about our last segment was you sharing your story. I think that should be a huge part of all of this since we're talking about the symptoms and diagnosis. So you giving us your story. Last week, we talked a lot about HPV, right? And how much we know about it, how much we didn't know about it. That, right, men are usually carriers of HPV, but cervical cancer is more of a feminine thing. So, going into the symptoms and diagnosis of cervical cancer, I always have my little research. When I was looking at the symptoms of cervical cancer, the main thing was vaginal bleeding. As people with uteruses and cervixes and these female reproductive organs, that's something that we experience on a pretty regular basis. So having it was a little bit different to hear that and go, okay, well, that's also a symptom for something really heavy after sex. Bleeding in between your menstrual periods can be symptoms for so many other things.
A lot of humans that we talk to, the symptoms for cervical cancer, all were things that could also be a lot of other things. So, abnormal bleeding, heavy bleeding, painful bleeding, irregular menstruation cycles, pain during intercourse. I talk to a lot of humans that have these symptoms, right? A lot of times we're told as women, we don't want to complain, we don't want to cause a problem. We're told this is normal, this is a variation of normal. And the fact that we have to advocate for ourselves, I think if there's anything abnormal about your reproductive system, whether it's the smell, you need to have a safe space in your life of someone to talk to about that. And if that's not your obstetrician, maybe seeking counsel from someone else in your life who has access to resources or a midwife. And that was the piece that we were kind of talking
Mm,
about. In midwifery care, I'm really leaning towards this idea. I want to just midwife male reproductive parts, menstruation, menopause, things outside of giving birth. I think most people look at midwifery as we just deliver babies, but we also help parents with milestones for young children and infants. We also help then when it comes to genetic screening. We're involving the partner in that and their screening and testing if that's something that they want to do. And so why wouldn't midwives be looking at how men and women having someone to talk to when something's normal and not being okay with someone going, this is just how your body works. Or we're just going to put you on birth control because that's the solution for every one of those. But as you see the side effects of birth control, it's like you're trading one for another, which you have the right to do. I think all of us at some of our life compromise health to kind of get immediate relief from something. If any of those things are abnormal, we've been told for so many years, when talk about it, it's like talking about incontinence, right? Like very scared of pelvic floor issues. We'll have a whole episode on that with a pelvic floor therapist joining us on that episode. But, for us, the way we looked at it now was we've just been kind of placated for a lot of years, and it's time for you to fight for that quality of life
mhm,
because early detection plays such an important role. I think Catherine was going to kind of get into why early detection is
So
so
I'm listening
important.
to what you're saying, and that to me is really, as women, our biggest problem because we have to go in, unless you're coming to see a midwife, and then in which case you're not fighting. You have someone there who's ready for you and talk with you on a basis. But I feel like what Sherry was saying when you go into the hospital or you go into a physician's office, you're already geared up to have to defend yourself. And I think it's even more so for us as women because we're not taken seriously. Like Sherry was saying, just another form of normal. But is it really? Is it really normal?
It's almost as if as women, we're supposed to suffer.
Yes.
We're supposed to be in suffering. We're
Uh-huh.
supposed to have like heavy bleeding during your period is normal. No, it's not.
Think of pain learning intercourse. A physician telling you that's just going to happen for you now. That's just your life. I have loved ones in my life who've been told that and have lived that life. I've seen how it affects relationships, partnerships, self-worth, that I can't connect with my partner because there's pain associated there. And that is a way of expressing love and adoration, yet it's causing me pain. And so I'm supposed to just kind of accept
Suck it up, buttercup.
That can produce so much shame in anyone's life who, the
And I think self-worth, self-value plays a role
Mhm.
because then you're told, I don't have enough value, enough that that's not even something that is important enough to somebody that I experience pleasure as well. Because
The repercussion of cervical cancer or ovarian cancer or uterine cancer or even vaginal cancer. I know our male counterpart have zero idea what that's like to have to go in, be opened up, and have half of what you associate with yourself as womanhood. The other half being your breasts, and then the other half is your reproductive system. So when you get cervical cancer or uterine cancer or ovarian cancer or vaginal cancer, have everything removed, are you still a woman?
I think that's a huge theme right now just because of the LGBTQ, there's so many letters, the EQI plus all of the things, right? Like being in this space of identity, what that really means, what you have to be considered a woman or to feel like a woman, to identify as one.
that would be such a good episode, actually, talking about the definition of a woman and where that kind of sits.
I think we
watched a lot
talked
of
about that a
movies,
little
and
bit.
there's a scene in a movie where one woman is talking to another woman, and she said, "They've taken my uterus, my ovaries, everything. They've taken my breasts. Am I even still a woman?" I remember sitting the movie's Erin Brockovich. Julie Roberts is talking to Mark Helgenberger, and Mark Helgenberger is saying, "I don't have anything. I'm so sick. They've taken everything. Am I still a woman?" My initial response is to stand up and yell, "Of course you are." But in our society, are we? I think that's a big question. So when we get sick with, which are, for all intents and purposes, are women's cancers. Men don't get ovarian cancer, they get testicular.
Prostate.
Men don't get uterine cancer, they get prostate cancer. Those two cancers are taken far more seriously and acted upon far sooner than women's cancers. Because it's, well, you know what? Let's take a wait and let's retest again.
In
3 to 6 months.
Well, that's one thing that we talked about last time is that you were saying how they usually do a PAP. If it comes back abnormal, then you usually wait 6 months to get another one done. But in the past, I've had an abnormal PAP and almost immediately we didn't go through any of the other things. There are so many different ways. LEAP, the cone biopsy, we went straight to a colposcopy and they were doing this biopsy on me. And I wanted so much more information about like, well, what was abnormal about these cells? And again, not like I know any information they would have given me would have.
But you could have done research.
I could have, and it was just like, well, it's abnormal, so we're going to go straight to this thing. Am I happy that they did? Because if I had waited 6 months, then who knows? Absolutely. But doing this research and seeing all the different biopsies and different ways that they are screening for cervical cancer and that those were
And
just skipped.
the SIBO rate based on early detection. What did it come up with? What were the numbers again? It was like 47% survival rate for early detection. And then it went to like 23 to 30 something. And then if it had spread to other parts of the body, it was 17. I've seen cancer in loved ones of mine show up, spread super quick, and then they were gone, right? So
why
sometimes waiting on the 6 months, but we do that. Like we say that as midwives, we say, see you back in 6 months. Maybe
could be
we
dead
should
6
be saying,
months.
maybe we should be saying, let's advocate for quicker detection.
Yeah.
Let's not sit on these
Well,
asquamous
and I
cells
was
or
thinking
whatever.
about what you said last week. Your physician went right to colposcopy. And I started
And
thinking
you had
about
done
that.
everything.
I had done everything. And I was thinking, well, shoot, why didn't my doctor just go right to the colposcopy? I think because it wasn't available.
You did say we were talking about the 90s, right? When you got diagnosed.
I don't think it was available until the mid-90s.
Mm.
Because hysterectomy in 1995, right before my 30th birthday, here, Corey. My hysterectomy right before my 30th birthday.
I think was important in the last video. We keep referring to this, but like we recorded this already. So we're just having this conversation
Again.
but it's kind of going in a different way. Erica shared her experience. So from the beginning to end, from the diagnosis, we kind of covered symptoms, but I want you to know how the steps progress and go. So even though this happened in the mid-90s, it's important for her to share that kind of procedure.
My doctor did the typical, I need you to come in. You can just tell me on, which in all honesty just would have been so much easier, but that's a whole other thing that doctors like to do. So we go in, I go in with my husband and she tells us, and I just kind of sit there. My husband immediately this shit. And I look at him and I'm, that's not helpful. Like, not helpful. And she said to me, what do you want to do? And she gave me different options. And she was like, well, let's try some chemo. Maybe we can do something for chemo. I did chemo for one treatment. I remember when I went home, I said to my husband, nope, I can't do this. Can't do this and be an effective mother. I don't know how women do it because I was really sick.
There are some humans that go through several rounds, right?
But I think, why am I going to put poison into my body to kill something that's trying to kill me anyway? Why don't I just get the surgery?
And I would want it out of me too, I think.
I was thinking about that too. I would.
I called my doctor, who was also the surgeon. I was like, I need you to schedule me. I need to go in. I need this done. I'm not going to go in and lose my hair. For those of you who don't know me, I have a very close relationship with my hair. And the thought of my hair falling out was something I could handle. Just about anything else I could
But
not
that was the
handle.
final straw.
That was it for me. There was no way. I've cut my hair many times. It's been this long before, 4 locks of love, but there was no way I wanted to fall out. So I decided to have the surgery. I had the surgery, and it's major. I don't care. Back then, now it is major abdominal surgery. They're literally opening you up and scooping you out like cantaloupe.
They're removing parts that have been in your body since before you were born.
So then there's the recovery. Back in the 90s, there was hormone replacement therapy. And this is before I knew anything about holistic. I knew nothing. I used to get this thing called the Penny Pincher Saver newspaper. That's how I started getting into crunchy stuff. But I knew back then, before I knew anything crunchier, there was no way I was going to keep taking these hormones. Because again, I kept getting it foreign chemicals in my body. Why would I do that? And in all honesty, the hormones made me feel really awful.
Yeah.
And I could take care of my kid. I had 2 little kids. So there was no way I could be down for the count because A, I had surgery. B, they had me on this medication to replace my hormones that made me feel really crud. I also didn't take a whole lot of the because I want to say it was about a 6 to 8 week recovery. Best decision I ever made.
Yes. And the fallout and the side effects.
Mm-hmm. I will say this. I never missed having my period. That was such a blessing. My girlfriend, they're complaining about, oh my God, pain, gotta do that. I'm like, oh, well, that could be.
I don't know anything about that.
I don't have to deal with that. What did you go through?
Maybe this is too personal. I know you wanted more than 2 children.
So yes, I had said in our last segment when we were first talking about cancer, I was one of those weirdos in my upper middle class neighborhood. I was like, I'm going to be like Mrs. Martin, 8 kids. I wanted to have a big family. So yes, I did go through a mourning period. And I think what I kept telling myself was, I'm here for the two that are here. Be thankful for what God has given you. Just be thankful that your kids aren't putting you in a cemetery and putting rocks on a headstone. That's what we're doing. Bring flowers. I went through a period, especially when my friends were getting pregnant.
Yeah.
That was hard. My last pregnancy with Hannah, I was actually pregnant at the same time as a girlfriend of mine, and that was really awesome. And then we moved, and I was diagnosed, and she let me know that she was pregnant again. That was hard because I was like, we're not going to be pregnant again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there was a bit of a mourning.
And I think everybody goes through a mourning when they know they're done with that stage of life. But when the
It's
choice
permanent.
kind of taken from you,
the
you
choice.
expect
Yeah.
it in your 40s, but in your 30s, you kind of feel like you got robbed out of a decision, right? Like you have a loss. You know, it's interesting. I didn't bring this up last time, but as we're sitting here talking, I remember there was a woman in my homeschool group up in Utah, and she got cancer. She went to a shaman somewhere in another country. This isn't my story, and I didn't witness it, right? So this is someone else's story.
Okay.
She went to a shaman in another country, and they did some ceremony, and in the ceremony, they pulled some dark mass out of her, right? She tells this fun story. My brain, as you're telling me that story, I think, even if you were going holistically, right, and you wanted to change your frame of thinking, mindset, gratitude, and mercy, the idea that you still knew there was a mass that needed to come out. Because I think of this extreme story here where a woman travels to another country and a shaman pulls some dark mass out of this woman's body. I think she had breast cancer. I am 1,000,000% positive she told me she was putting some salve on her breast and it started oozing and it removed this mass. So my brain, I think, the mass still has to come out. How would it be reabsorbed? If it's bad, your body would have to remove it. I wonder what makes people kind of go through, like, when they go in with cancer and that's destroyed, where does it go then? Do they reabsorb like those other
That's a
cancer
really good
cells back
question.
into the body?
Really good
My
question.
ignorance is showing here, but you've now destroyed cancer cells. They're dead. Where do they
Where they
go?
go.
Mm.
Where do they go? That might have been part of my problem with chemo and with hormone replacement therapy because I'm putting all of these fake things into my body.
Well, they're real things.
Well, yeah, fake. You know, they're poisonous.
Man-made.
Thank you.
And I know people have gone through chemo and radiation and come out as a survivor.
Which is awesome. I just knew, I said this also before, I knew that wouldn't be for me.
The survivors that I know, whether it be breast cancer or any other type of female cancer, they've had something removed. They've gone through chemo and radiation, but they've also had the breast removed before it got to travel. So there was always that surgery piece. It wasn't just these two medicinal Western
and there's
medicine
only
type of
certain
things.
things that can be removed, right? And
Yeah.
so thank goodness that there were some, like my grandmother had ovarian cancer and she beat it. They removed it and she had a full hysterectomy at a young age, but she died of lung cancer. So in my brain, I kind of go, she removed it, but I hate this idea that it travels. I hate this idea, but I know we need to eat healthy and create a good environment inside of our bodies.
Does that really have any, seriously? Because you think about people who drink and smoke and eat fast food their entire lives and they live forever. And then you have people who
So is
eat
it more
well,
about your
hydrate.
emotional state? Like you brought that up last time, how in birth, we say birth is like 80% mental.
I think a
Maybe
lot.
when
I
it
think
comes
I
to
think,
like
I
our
think a
health,
lot of that ties in because I had already decided when I told my physician that I wanted to do that surgery.
but you made life changes.
I decided I was not going to die.
You decided you're not going to die, and you did make
I did
changes
make
to
some
your life
changes.
and your
I
diet.
did.
There were some big
I did.
changes you made when it came to self-care. I think when we talk about self-care, we think, oh, massage, getting your nails done. It's prioritizing self.
Whether
And
that's
the
mental or
time.
spiritual,
Yes.
all of that.
I
Doing
need
the
an
work.
hour right now
Yeah.
to process, to nourish, to treat, to sit with, to whatever that is. But I think when we're in that parenthood stage, all your decisions were for your girls more than they were for you.
What I was going to do or my aftercare had anything.
Were you forced into self-care because your girls were your inspiration, your motivation, but that it has to be self-care?
Well, I was a stay-at-home mom. So I had to take all of that into consideration. How did they see? I did not want my kids seeing me like the way I saw my mom when she was dying of cancer.
That was a big part of
That
your
was
your
brought that up.
choices.
my mother died when I was 9. She died of ovarian cancer, spread to her lungs, and they didn't catch it. And I don't know if they didn't catch it because she didn't go in, but we were part of the medical community, so I don't really see that. I think they probably just blew her off. And by the time they realized something was really wrong, I used this term last time, she was walking dead. I remember her being sick, and I remember her going in for her chemo and coming home. So disturb her. When I was diagnosed, I was like, no way, I'm not doing it. I don't think my mom was allowed to make a decision about care. It's the 70s.
They just told her
This
what
is
we're
what
doing.
we're doing. This is absolutely what we're doing.
Straight.
Yeah, no.
Over 90% of humans
And
turn to your
I think
right?
that obviously had big impact. Like all of a sudden, there I was. I'm facing this major surgery. I'm reflecting on what happened in my family. And I said, I wrote out my will and all of that. I'd say to my husband, the night before my surgery, if anything happens, if I don't make it, I swear to God, if you make the same mistakes that my father made, I will haunt you until the day you die. It will not be pretty. I will drive you crazy.
Chase you up the stairs when you turn the light out.
Completely. But it's funny. He kind of
But
looked
she'll
at
just do
me.
damage, right? And what a gift. Like, share this super traumatic thing happened to you in your life more than once, but the loss of your mom, you have the skill and this ability to navigate something that if it happened to you,
I
your
wouldn't have
story
known,
could have been totally different. You might have
having
given
the
it longer.
information that I
Do you feel like
my mother
mom
was
with you?
my mother and my cousin were in the OR with me. And if you were to ask my doctor, because I had a dream the night before I had my surgery. I had a dream before I had my surgery, and my mother came to me in my dream and said, do not, under any circumstances, allow them to put you under general anesthesia. She was very clear. If you go under general, you will not wake up. So when I went to the hospital the next morning, the anesthesiologist comes in, and I said to him, I can't put me under general. I need a spinal block. He goes, like an epidural? I said, yeah, but like a super epidural. And he goes, why? I said, if I go under, I will not wake up. And he just looked at me. And I was like, I'm not kidding. I will walk out of here and reschedule. Like, I was ready to walk out. And my surgeon came. And she was like, what's going on? And he was like, she wants a spinal. She doesn't want to go under general. She's sure she won't wake up. My doctor looked at me. She goes, okay, do what the lady asked.
Yeah.
And I was,
Good doctor.
she was a
Mhm.
good doctor. And I remember I was in the OR and they gave me really good drugs, right? So I was pretty out of it because, they're opening you up. And because obviously I didn't have a baby in there, I think I was on morphine. It's really insane. But I remember afterward, my doctor asked me who I was talking to. And I was like, oh, you didn't see them? My mom and my cousin Barbara, who had recently passed away, were in the OR with me talking to them.
Mhm.
So I had my mom holding my right hand. I had my cousin Barbara holding my left hand, and they were just talking to me. And every time I would start to fall asleep, the surgeon did tell me I would start to doze off, but then I would jar myself awake. No, we're not sleeping now. We need to get you out of this operating, and you can sleep. Pain meds
Are going to make you drowsy.
My mother and my cousin would not let me fall asleep in the OR, so they kept me talking. According to my surgeon, I was running diatribe of gobble.
Couldn't
No
shut you
idea
up.
what I was just babbling away. I think they found me somewhat amusing and entertaining. I would not go under. I knew I wouldn't wake up.
Felt like your loved one. That's good. I think that there's merit to that, right? Like that ancestral connection and those that have connected our lives and how we're tied to one another. And that DNA you share, that's pretty beautiful. I mean, it's a horrible tragedy, any child losing their parent at a young age, right? But you in your brilliance and your humanity to recognize, like, I'm going to take what I know, even if you felt like you fought for yourself. I think that's great because a lot of people don't fight for themselves. They kind of chalk it up to like, that's not real. It's not
Well, I
tangible. I
think we
can't
tell
see
our
it.
clients this. If that little voice in your head is telling you something, listen, do not ignore it.
If I have a client call me and be like, I feel like something's wrong with my baby, I
Go
go,
in,
go in.
go in, go in, go in.
Don't even wait for me to show up. What's the worst that could happen?
They
You
send you-
waste a couple hours. But if you have a premonition, even if you're wrong, I want you to start listening to that.
Better to be wrong than to have ignored it.
But how do we get there though? How do we get to this point of trusting ourselves and
And our
discernment?
bodies.
And is it just anxiety or is it my,
Like, what wolf am I feeding here?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Is it fear
Yeah.
or is it something that I really need to be paying attention to?
Am I being a hypochondriac or is this legitimately something? But I think when you have solid evidence, like your menstrual system, any aspect of that feels
Mhm.
out of whack, that it's physical evidence saying this is accurate.
But I think it goes back to the way we're treated as
Mhm.
women in our community. Maybe if my mother had been taken seriously earlier on, she would still be.
And it was the year that she just happened to exist here. With the decade of where she showed up here on this earth life and how they treated women. And I think this piece always bothers me when people are like, but we treat women so much better than we used to, right? And they want us to live in that space because they feel like they're doing
Yeah.
better
You
than they
feel
were
so
20
it's like,
years
oh,
ago.
so
you
I
know?
should be grateful that you're not treating me like dog shit anymore. Now you're just treating me like the Dust Bunny Harvey in the corner. Oh, thank you so much for that.
We're not doing as bad as we used to, right? But like for me, I just want to go, yeah, but we could always do better. And that could be said about everyone and everything. We could always do better. Humanity, we've never come to this part where we're like, oh, humankind, we're all perfect in all things. Exactly. So if you look around you, we're just kind of figuring it out. And so how do we navigate the unknown? How do we navigate ever changing? Because it bothers me when people go to science. Science is always changing, always gathering, dating, and then go, oh, we've learned this new thing. As women, we have to be diligent. We have to be persistent and we have to be diligent. There are so many things in our life where we go, accept it. So many things that happen to us where we're not treated as equal, we're not witnessed, we're going to let that slide. But there are some things we can't let slide. If I have cancer, if I have an illness, if I have something that keeps me from being the best me I need to be, I have to advocate for myself or I have to surround myself talking about how to support someone with supportive human that will help me and encourage me to get the support I need.
I think that's a big piece. I didn't have that. But again, it was the 90s. There was no social media. So finding other women who were in the same situation as me was really difficult. But I think that telling people, oh, this is what's going on, I didn't want the pity. Oh, that's so terrible. Whereas I will say, when I was recovering, I remember I had an uncle who came to Arlington, Virginia to visit. He stayed for a week and I wanted for nothing. Food done. He made sure my husband was taking care of all the animals, so I didn't have to in the car, didn't have to worry about it. The kids needing to go somewhere, didn't have to worry about it. So the first 2 weeks of recovery, I did have a small support system. My husband was around for the first week post-surgical, and then my uncle came down for that second. And then by the time he left, I felt like I probably should have stayed in bed for at least another week or two. But I felt like, well, it's been 2 weeks. I should really get up and start doing stuff. With regards to survivorship and advocacy, if I had more people around me advocate for me to recover, I probably would have had a better recovery period. My recovery period was awful. I can't even honestly say it was exhausting.
The world keeps turning. When we go through some of the biggest tragedies in our life, every human being on the planet has a story where they have had to overcome. You feel so alone and disconnected from the world. And so people come to you and are like, how can we help you? It's
I
hard
yeah, I
because you
never know
don't
how to
even know how to navigate it because you're in survival mode. You don't even know what you need. And I think that's what we talked about last time, the different pieces between showing up for people. There was a woman in my ward that I was really close to, and there was a sign up sheet. Those of us who loved her could go sign up for hours. We'd go sit with her. And it wasn't feeling bad for her. It was reading to her. It was writing down. She was writing things she wanted her kids to remember about like their history. And sometimes we would scribe. It was her being able to have a moment during her final day to still have human interaction. She wasn't in a bed, just kind of, she still had humans in her life who were like, what can we do for you? For her telling her story for her children and putting that to paper was really important. I think all the humans that kind of helps create that. And so showing up for people that and I think it was, we kind of last time talked about how to know when to insert. You have to be in people's lives to know what they need. And so that means you have to take time out of your life so that if you have somebody in your life going through something big like cancer or a loss or whatever, then when you notice like they've got to get out of bed to take their kids to school every day. And if you notice that, you go, you know what? I got to drive past your house to get coffee. Could I grab your kids and take them to school? Like, and I imagine, even though that feels so small and took you what, an extra 10, 15 minutes out of your day, it's so big for the
Lightening
person.
that. Yeah.
Lightening the load. I love that. What can we do as humans in general to lighten each other's load, especially when we're going through something big like cancer? Because you have to rest. You have to do self-care. And maybe you don't even know what self-care looks like because you haven't done it before.
Well, I think that, for me, I honestly, I don't think I really wanted anybody around. And all of my friends were out of state, which again, blessing. And I didn't really have that familial support.
But what a blessing, though, to have this uncle who was there supporting you.
He was awesome.
And
My uncle, may his memory always be a blessing. He was what we would call a mensch. And for those of you who don't know what a mensch is, Yiddish for good person. When you say, oh, such a mensch, that means they are a really good person. Like, that's like the biggest compliment you could give, such a mensch. But that was my uncle. He would give you the shirt off his back. He would drive you wherever you needed to go. He would do anything for you. Well, it was my mom's brother.
Right.
Yeah.
So his connection to you and his life
Yes.
experience brought him to you. I think it's interesting when you go through something like that. You do kind of discover
Who's there.
who's there?
some people surprise you
Mhm.
in positive
And
ways.
negative
I
ways.
tell my clients that all the time. I'm like, you're going to be really surprised who pops up to actually be helpful, like to unload the dishwasher,
Yeah.
to fold that laundry. And who did you think was going to show up? But all they want to do is come over and hold your baby and eat your food. I remember going to a postpartum with you once upon it forever ago. But Sherry was like, oh, come with me. And I was like, okay. And
I
we
never
walked,
like being.
we walked into this house and there were like 30 people there. She had just had a baby like the day before. I wasn't at the birth, but she just had a baby like the day before and you were doing your like 24-hour postpartum visit. And we go into this house and there's all these people. They're having a party. And Sherry was not happy. She's looking around. You see the mom in the kitchen doing dishes. And Sherry goes into the kitchen and she turns the faucet off.
What I did.
She leads the mom back into the bedroom. Sherry said something like, where's the baby? And she said something like, I don't know. I had to go into the living room and take the baby away from grandma. I literally was like, oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
She had all of these people around her. My point in this is about, healing, support, all of that stuff. She had all of these people around her. Not a single person was concerned with this mother. All they cared about was holding that baby, eating her food, drinking her beverages, and watching football on the TV.
Your wife's up doing dishes in the kitchen.
And you're okay with it.
And obviously that has stayed with me. I think it happened like 7. I remember I brought the baby in.
I think I know who you're talking
Gave
about.
her mom as soon as that mom had her baby. everything changed. Like you could see her relax, and then Sherry like,
Well, good for you because what the I tell my clients that all the time, especially when we're going over postpartum stuff. It's like, who's going to be there to help
Who's
you?
gonna help?
People want to come in and they want to help you. Sometimes they don't know how. And I tell them, I go, okay, so you get like a dry erase board, you put it on the fridge, and whatever needs to be done, you need to unload the dishwasher, vacuum, whatever.
She had me go
I'm
into
so
the living
scared.
room, and she was like, Erica, you need to go and give these people jobs.
Yeah.
You need to go and give these people jobs. And I was like, okay. So I kind of went out into the living room and I was like, so here's what we need. And I started pointing to people. Like, you need to empty the dishwasher. It's go to the grocery store.
Get off your ass.
Know that door. You're
We're not going to put any money in the jar. Get off your ass and help this mom. Like,
okay,
yeah.
they scurried. Like, all of a sudden, everybody had to leave. Everybody had to go home. Were some, like, family friends who weren't even that close to this family. And they were, like, up doing stuff for this family. I'm like, huh. That was a big learning experience for me. Because for me, it was like, I would have thought,
The
and I don't know
family.
why I would have thought this because I have such a, I don't know, money family. But I would have thought that
That is
with
gonna
these
be like,
30 plus people in this woman's house, somebody
Yeah.
would have dawned on them to do something. No, I
think hospital with those people all been there.
no, no,
No.
no, absolutely
So
not.
why
no.
were they there with her at home? You know,
Eating her food and drinking her drinks.
and she's cleaning up
And
after
she's
you.
cleaning up after them. And then
After she
I
just
think
pushed
what
a baby out.
actually made a big impression on me was when we walked in and she was standing at the sink and no sound, just tears.
Mm.
And that's when I could
I
tell
think that probably ignited some.
I think that's what tipped you over the edge very gently, turned off the faucet, lovingly put your arm around her and herded her back to her bedroom. And then
I
you were
think
like,
that's the goldenness inside of being a midwife, right? Knowing what a mom needs just by being there with her and seeing the state that she's in, but then also knowing that we need this time after we have this baby or after we get
Have
a huge
surgery.
surgery, right?
You have to know live. And so
Yeah.
when you have an obstetrician, they see you for these 10-minute intervals. They don't see your life. And I want to keep on course for the cancer piece because that's important. But I remember a doctor in town that we all with my client was seeing them for some stuff. And it was her second baby she was having with me. And he had some issues with her weight. And he called me and he was lecturing me about this woman's weight. And I go, did you know she's a plus size model and she owns a company? Yes, she owns a company that makes healthy meals for people. She has a garden that she
I
grows.
remember
She
this.
has a, she's
Yeah.
super fit. She's super active. Her husband's a trainer and a personal chef.
Yeah.
I go, so I actually, but I know this about her life because we have conversations about this in the office and I've been in her home and I've seen her online. I've seen her talking about her garden. So I think as midwives, because we get to see such an intimate piece of people's lives. So to me, when he was like, I don't know, her sugars were kind of high and I know you're monitoring them because her sugars were high at her gestational diabetes. So she bought that thing. She was monitoring her sugars. And I was like, I don't know what more you want.
What would you be
watching
doing
it.
differently?
I said, I'm telling you, I know enough about her life that I trust her. But I think physicians don't get that ability to trust people and for good reason.
I think we've all had these conversations. Doctors who we know really well, work with. We get to know our clients on such a deeper, which is the goal. Doesn't always happen. Percent of the time, we really do get to know these families. And it's not just the pregnant person, it's their partner. If they have kids, if they have pets, to know what
Otherwise,
they
I
need.
don't know what
Otherwise,
you
you don't know
need.
how to serve. I think to circle back to cervical cancer, I think that goes a long way to women's cancers, women's illnesses, because if we can't support each other when we're not pregnant, how can we support each other when we are?
And postpartum. when we
And
really
it's
get that support.
general. I think we have to take an interest in other people's lives.
Mhm.
I think growing up, most of my married life was in the church. And so you had that congregation. And so you were aware of human beings in your life. So even if you're not in a church congregation, you can certainly take interest in other humans' lives that come into your life. And I found it such a joy to take interest in other
Mhm.
people's lives because it got me out of my own mind and my own suffering and my own hills I had to conquer because I could see that other people were also doing this whole human thing and had their own stories and struggles. It made me feel like, okay, keep on keeping on because we're all here doing this. And if we can lighten each other's load, ease each
Mhm.
other's burden, right? What can you do for somebody diagnosed with cancer instead of treating it like this scary thing? And we kind of talked about that last time. Like you learned somebody has Down syndrome. You're kind of like, oh, I don't have experience with that. So I'm
Right,
nervous
you
and I
just treat
don't
them
know
as
how
a
to.
human being.
That
Right.
part.
But if you don't have, there's a fear there. I see it. I witness it. Anything that feels odd or strange. Someone's in a
Abnormal.
wheelchair. They're
Anything
missing
that's
a limb.
abnormal.
Same thing with cancer. You kind of, fear of mortality shows up for me. But do your work then.
Yeah.
Do your work because that's good for you.
Yeah.
It's good for the people around you. It's good for your children to see. And it's good for you to step into somebody else's life because karma, right? Karma is real and it may not come back from that avenue, but later it's going to show up for your life because you're going to recognize and accept it.
And thank people for sharing their stories because, like you said, you didn't want to share this story with the people who are around you because you didn't want that pity. But when someone can sit and say, this is what I'm going through, and whether they tell you it sucks or not, for them to say, this is what I'm going through, thank you. Thank you for opening up and
Well, and it's
giving that to
I
me,
feel
you
so
know?
much more comfortable talking about it now than when it was happening. And I can honestly say I cancer survivor, which, it's funny. I hear other people say that. I will sit there and be like, well, that's amazing. And then I'll be like, but no, it's different.
Mm.
I always try to qualify like, oh, it's different for me because I didn't have to go through, or I chose to go through all of the chemical trauma.
You started it. You can relate with that. But I think we all feel like that, right? To some extent. And I'm so proud of you for sharing your story. And Jasmine's right. Like gratitude for people who treat you as a safe space, then you now have to continue to be that safe space. And you have to guard that and take action. Or at least vocalize what you can and can't do. But that, I guess, would be what I would implore humans to do is advocate for self if something feels abnormal. And then if something is abnormal, if you don't have a tribe, building a tribe will be the most important thing you can do because they'll bring facets and things to light that you can't see because when you're in it, you really, I don't think have that ability to see all the
You
parts.
can't, you're myopic.
Yes,
That's
that's
the
a
best
good
way to
word for
put it.
that
You're myopic. You can only see right.
because you're trying to survive literally.
You can't
Right.
see anything that.
And so building that tribe, whether that be a midwife, a care provider, a family member, somebody who's gone through it before. And we brought up last time, there are groups and agencies and advocacy groups and local community. And every community is going to look a little different. I don't know as much about the cancer piece here, but for example, I've done the Down syndrome baby before, and the Down syndrome resources here in Las Vegas are great. So she chose somewhere where it had much better resources for her child and she moved there. I'm not saying everybody has that ability, but seeking that and making choices that you and your family need. I think we're such people pleasers that sometimes we just go, okay, well, we don't want to affect this. We feel this obligation. I have clients come in and talk about their experiences at their current care provider and their awful experiences. They're like, but I don't want to hurt their feelings. I'm sorry to tell you, your care provider doesn't think about you that much.
Your care provider,
Even your midwife.
your
Even
medical
your
care
midwife.
provider doesn't think about you as soon as they walk out that door.
When you leave their office, they got to move on to somebody else.
They're taking care of so many
Yeah.
humans. And even as a midwife, when I got up and I was seeing 8 to 12 clients in a month, it was getting hard. It was getting really hard to juggle that. During COVID, I went, this is too hard to juggle. And I'm losing quality of care over quantity. So it was, I've got to make this sacrifice of going down to 4 to 6 clients and figure out how to shorten my overhead so I can keep giving the care that these women deserve. How do you do that in cancer when it's so Western medicalized and what you're going through, you don't even know. You're just kind of trusting the science behind it, right? We talked about seeking out other modalities like energy work, Deepak
Acupuncture,
Chopra, I think has
acupressure.
chiropractic care. There are so many modalities. So even though you might enter this as a Western medicine of removing or chemo or radiation, I think alongside of that, work on that spiritual mental health, whether that be prayer, meditation.
Going across the country to see a shaman to get the bad energy pulled out. Sound healing, any energy work, all of that, I think, but because it is 3% mental and spiritual, and then this 20% of your physical body doing the work. I think it's so important in this healing aspect, whether we're talking about cancer or a postpartum mom.
For anybody suffering, I think we did good today because we want you to recognize that anything revolving your menstrual cycle, if that's out of whack, don't accept this idea that you just have to birth control. Get a second opinion. Check out other different options because just because you're a woman with parts does not mean to suffer and know that this is just a part of your life. I'm not saying that you might go through your life and have painful menstruation your whole life, but don't accept it because that you deserve that. Find out answers. It's hard if you feel like you can't advocate for yourself when it comes to being dismissed. If you recognize and are self-aware of that, that's when you build a team and bring someone from that team
Community.
because there are definitely times where I have been, whether it was at a birth or at a hospital or something was going on, some other human in the room advocated for me, checked on doing whatever, and someone else went, "Hey, Sherry, they're doing this thing, and I know you don't like that." And so I had other people to be my eyes and ears when I was over here just trying to survive. And I imagine your uncle and all the humans that you had, even if that was small, because sometimes one person can make all the difference in the world. And so open your heart to that. And that we all as human beings need help. And maybe think of all the times you helped someone else, right? We spend a lot of time talking about the shame that comes with being less than whatever story you think you're supposed to be. We all meet that less than mark, but maybe you go, you know what, today I'm worth it and my kids are worth it. So you find my children are worth me finding solutions and answers. She could go through this better than her mother did, hopefully. If it ever showed up to her kids could do better, and her grandkids and her grandkids. Give yourself time to process it. No decision, even though early advocacy is really important. I think sit with it for a couple days, explore different routes, find out what feels right and what works to you, and find out what your resources are in your local community. Go into those local Facebook groups, those local mom groups, because there's a plethora of information out there. We run a mama's Facebook group, and I've had to go into some of the nurses in there and kind of been, oh, look, the parents give each other advice. The care providers, they make an appointment and come show up. Let's let these mom groups be mom groups. They have so much information out there. Moms are really intelligent creatures. I speak for moms because I dad. In these mom groups, you can get a wealth of information. Some of it false, but you know what? Some of it works. And that's the thing. I think when it comes to cancer, there's not just a one size fits all. Right. This is my life experience, and my life experience gets to be unique to me. And I get to be the star of my story in the book because I am the star of my story. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Seek care and push your partner to also receive that care because it's something that the two of you hold responsibility and burden for, whether that's for their health or your health. Together, you're having and raising these families together, and you have to be what each other need, and you have to hear each other, and there has to be equality. Women's needs have to meet where men's needs are. A lot of men's needs also get over because of society and the narrowed mindedness we have sometimes of what men's roles are, and step out of that. Be willing to step out of that to be what you're.
Thank you for that. No, I think that was a great closing, and I'm really excited for February because in February we're going to be talking about eating in labor, which is a huge question that we get, especially as a doula. They're like, okay, I want to eat, or should I be eating? This is what I can and can't do. And so eating in labor, nutrition, and then also in February we're going to talk about Black history. So I'm excited about that too. We are so grateful to have you guys watching and listening. And
Post your question, comment. We would love to know what they are.
thank you.
Bye, guys.
Okay.